When you look at a population map of South America, it's hard to miss. Cradled between the two continental giants of Brazil and Argentina is a small patch of land that seems almost empty. This is Uruguay, a country known for its stability. Yet, with a population of just 3.4 million people, it's minuscule compared to Argentina's 46 million and Brazil's 215 million. So why does almost nobody live in Uruguay? Our answer today doesn't begin with economics or politics, but with the very soil, hills, and water that defines the country. To understand Uruguay, we have to first look at its landscape. Unlike its neighbors, Uruguay lacks dramatic geographic features. There is no towering Andean peaks, no impenetrable Amazonian jungle, no vast, arid Atacama Desert. The country is, for the most part, an extension of the Argentine Pampas, a bunch of low, rolling hills and fertile grasslands stretching throughout most of the country. This landscape is a rancher's paradise, land perfectly suited for grazing cattle and sheep, which would become the bedrock of its economy for centuries. This seeming simplicity is the first clue in Uruguay's mysterious population issue. The very openness of the land, its lack of natural barriers, made it incredibly easy to traverse. There were no isolated mountain valleys for distinct cultures to develop in seclusion or towering mountains to serve as easily defensible strongholds. The entire territory was accessible. On the surface, this sounds like a recipe for rapid settlement and prosperity. But here's where it gets really interesting. What if that very openness, that lack of natural defenses, made the land not easier to settle, but harder to hold on to? While its internal geography is defined by soft hills, its borders are almost entirely drawn by water. To the west, the Uruguay River creates a clear, wide boundary with Argentina. To the south, the country opens into the massive estuary of the Rio de la Plata, one of the most significant waterways in the entire world. And to the east lies the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. In the age of exploration and colonization, these were the highways. They provided direct routes for trade, communication, and most importantly, for invasion. The Spanish and Portuguese crowns didn't see an idyllic pasture land. They saw a strategic port of entry into the heart of the continent. This brings us to the ultimate geographic prize, Montevideo. Situated on the northern shore of the Rio de la Plata, the Bay of Montevideo is one of the finest natural deepwater harbors in all of South America. For any maritime empire, controlling this harbor was non-negotiable. It was the perfect place to base a naval fleet, control trade flowing from the continent's interior, and project power across the entire region. Fertile land, a network of river highways, and a world-class harbor, it was the ideal blueprint for a thriving colony. And two of the world's most powerful empires, Spain and Portugal, both came to the exact same conclusion. This next part will change how you think about the relationship between geography and conflict. You see, the final piece of the geographic puzzle lies not in what Uruguay has, but in what it lacks. Its greatest natural resource is its soil. For centuries, the land was singularly devoted to cattle ranching. This form of agriculture is incredibly land intensive, but requires remarkably few people. A massive ranch, covering thousands of acres, might only be run by a handful of gauchos, or ranchers. Unlike the gold mines of Brazil or the diverse agricultural zones of Argentina, Uruguay's primary economic engine did not demand, or even encourage, a large population. It actively promoted a sparse, widely distributed one. So the very source of Uruguay's wealth was also a prescription for its emptiness. The land was open, easily accessible by water, and economically suited for a low-density population. It was a perfect corridor, a prize to be claimed, but a nightmare to defend. And so the geographic stage was set for a monumental clash between two worldwide competitors. That phrase, a nightmare to defend, really stands out. It implies a need for constant 360-degree awareness of what's happening in that open space. And while my daily grind isn't a colonial conflict, that need to stay fully aware of my surroundings is exactly why I want to talk about this video's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Raycon. It's Raycon's anniversary, and the essential open earbuds are stealing the spotlight. They're 30% off. Honestly, these have become my best friends for my daily grind. They're sleek, smart, and way cooler than your average earbuds. Whether I'm working, commuting, or just winding down, they fit right in and make everything feel a little more fun. But what makes them so different is Raycon's open ear design. They sit just outside your ear canal, so while you get this crystal clear immersive audio, your ears are still open to the world. It's perfect for staying tuned into traffic while on a walk, or just being able to hear the mail carrier at the door without having to pause my podcast. They're also incredibly lightweight and comfortable for all-day use. The multi-angular hook rotates for a personalized, secure fit, so they stay put no matter what I'm doing. And a feature I find essential for my workflow is the multi-point connection. I can be listening to something on my phone and seamlessly switch over to a video call on my laptop without touching a thing. Here's the kicker. Raycon delivers the same premium audio quality as the big brands, but at half the price. With over 3 million happy customers and a 30-day happiness guarantee, there's really no reason to overpay. Honestly, I use these all the time and I think you should check them out. So click the link in the description box or go to buyraycon.com/geography-open to get 30% off the essential open earbuds. All right, so from a modern company making a smart move in a competitive market, let's get back to a historic one. A bold strategic move by Portugal that was like a dagger aimed at the heart of the Spanish Empire. For centuries, this land, known as the Banda Oriental, or eastern bank of the Uruguay River, was home to nomadic peoples like the Charrua. They were fierce, independent hunter-gatherers, whose culture was perfectly adapted to the vast open grasslands. But their world, which had existed for millennia, was about to be shattered by a colonial rivalry that began thousands of miles away. For the first 2 centuries after the Spanish arrived in the Americas, the Banda Oriental was largely ignored. Spain was obsessed with the silver of Peru and Bolivia, while Portugal was growing rich from sugar plantations in northern Brazil. This empty pasture land held no obvious riches. That all changed in 1680. In a bold, strategic move, the Portuguese sailed down the coast and founded Colonial del Sacramento, directly across the water from the Spanish stronghold of Buenos Aires. It was a dagger aimed at the heart of Spain's American empire, a foothold from which Portugal could control trade and smuggling on the Rio de la Plata. The Spanish reaction was swift and decisive. To counter the Portuguese threat, they established their own fortress on the coast in 1726, Montevideo. And with that, the game was on. For the next 100 years, the Banda Oriental became a permanent battleground. Control of the territory was a revolving door passed back and forth between 2 empires through a series of treaties and bloody conflicts. The land was too valuable for either side to ignore, but too difficult for either to definitively hold. This constant state of war had a profound effect on settlement. Few families would risk moving to a region where their farm could be overrun by a foreign army at any moment. The land remained sparsely populated, home only to soldiers, smugglers, and hardy gauchos. The game changer in all of this came from something happening thousands of miles away. In the early 1800s, the Napoleonic Wars in Europe shattered the power of Spain and Portugal, sparking wars of independence across South America. A charismatic leader named José Artigas emerged, fighting for a federal republic free from both European control and domination by Buenos Aires. He is now seen as the father of Uruguay, but his vision was much grander than just a single, small country. After the Spanish were finally expelled, the old rivalry simply took on a new form. The newly independent Brazil and Argentina immediately picked up where their colonial masters left off, each claiming the Banda Oriental as their own. In 1821, Brazil annexed the entire territory, renaming it the Cisplantine Province. In response, a small band of Uruguayan patriots, the legendary 33 Orientals, launched a rebellion with Argentine backing. This ignited the Cisplantine War, a brutal 3-year conflict that devastated the land and ended in a complete stalemate. Neither emerging giant could defeat the other, but neither would ever consent to the other controlling the strategic north bank of the Rio de la Plata. The future of the territory hung in the balance. It seemed destined for either permanent division or endless war. That is, until a third global power, an ocean away, stepped in with a solution that would change the map of South America forever. That power was Great Britain. With its massive industrial economy, Britain's primary interest in the region was not territory, but trade. The constant warfare of Argentina and Brazil was choking off British access to the lucrative markets of the South American interior. British diplomats, seeking stability, mediated the peace talks. Their proposal was radical. Neither Argentina nor Brazil would get the land. Instead, the contested Banda Oriental would be established as a completely new, independent country. This new nation, Uruguay, would serve as a buffer state. Its existence would physically separate the two regional powers, preventing future conflict and, most importantly for Britain, guaranteeing that the Rio de la Plata would remain an international waterway, open to all trade. In 1828, with the signing of the Treaty of Montevideo, both Argentina and Brazil reluctantly agreed. The Oriental Republic of Uruguay was officially born. So Uruguay began its life not through a triumphant war of independence for its own sake, but as a geopolitical compromise designed by outsiders. Its geography had made it a battleground, and its history ensured it would begin its journey as a war-torn, underpopulated buffer. But this leads to our final question. Why does Uruguay's population today look less like a country and more like the population of a single large city? Uruguay started its life as a war-torn, sparsely populated territory, which certainly doesn't help a country's population. But to truly grasp why Uruguay is so empty today, we need to start at the beginning of the modern era and the immense demographic forces that shaped the destinies of all three countries. The late 1800s and early 1900s saw one of the greatest migrations in human history, as tens of millions of Europeans, mostly from Spain and Italy, crossed the Atlantic in search of land and opportunity. This is the moment that would seal Uruguay's demographic fate. Imagine you're a poor farmer from Naples or Galicia in the year 1900, deciding where to risk everything for a new life. You look at a map of South America. To the south, you see Argentina, a vast country with seemingly infinite and fertile pampas, promising land for all. Its capital, Buenos Aires, is already blossoming into the Paris of South America, a beacon of culture and wealth. To the north, you see Brazil, a country of continental size with a voracious appetite for labor on its coffee plantations and in its growing cities. Then you see Uruguay, a small sliver of land, politically unstable for much of its early history, offering more of the same landscape as Argentina, but on a miniature scale. Why would you choose the small, uncertain option when its neighbors offered opportunity on a scale almost unimaginable back in Europe? Uruguay simply couldn't compete for migration. It was a small shop sitting between two superstores. While it did actually receive a significant number of immigrants relative to its size, it was only a trickle compared to the flood of people pouring into the ports of Buenos Aires and Santos. But it wasn't just about the pull from across the ocean. This next part is absolutely key to understanding the population numbers. The real demographic story is about the immense gravitational pull of the cities that grew right on Uruguay's doorstep. Let's look at another map and find Montevideo. Now look directly across the wide expanse of the Rio de la Plata. There sits Buenos Aires. As it exploded into one of the world's great metropolises, it became a demographic black hole. It pulled in people not just from Europe, but from all over the region, including from Uruguay itself. For young Uruguayans seeking opportunity, the brightest lights and biggest dreams were often just a short ferry ride away. Today, the greater Buenos Aires metropolitan area is home to roughly 16.3 million people. A single city, a stone's throw away, holds nearly 5 times the entire population of its neighboring country. Now look to the north, to Uruguay's other border. The closest major city in Brazil is Porto Alegre, the capital of the state of Rio Grande do Sul. For centuries, this region of southern Brazil competed directly with Uruguay. As Brazil industrialized, Porto Alegre became a powerhouse of its own. Today, its metropolitan area is home to about 4.4 million people. This means that the closest major city in Brazil also has a larger population than the entire country of Uruguay. Sandwiched between these two colossal urban magnets, Uruguay never stood a chance of developing its own massive population center on the same scale. Facing this reality, Uruguay chose a different path. Unable to compete on size, it competed on quality. Throughout the 1900s, the country invested its agricultural wealth into creating one of the most progressive countries on earth, with a strong social safety net, free education, and a high standard of living. It became known as the Switzerland of South America. This model fostered a stable, educated, and relatively egalitarian society, but it was not a model built for explosive population growth. Paired with a low birth rate and an aging populace similar to that of many European nations, Uruguay's population has remained stable but small. So why does almost nobody live in Uruguay? First, its geography created a landscape whose primary industry, ranching, required vast amounts of land, but very few people. Second, its history forged it as a small buffer state, giving it a tiny population from the very beginning. And finally, the immense demographic gravity of its neighbors and their megacities pulled the 1900s wave of growth and migration towards them, leaving Uruguay a quiet demographic shadow. But the emptiness of Uruguay is not a sign of failure. Rather, it's the defining feature of a unique and remarkable country that most would be envious of today. Uruguay is home to only 3.5 million people today, and about 2 million of those Uruguayans live in the capital and major city of Montevideo. So there is an urban life in the country, but it definitely pales in comparison to, say, Buenos Aires. This week, I've made my way all the way to the capital of Georgia, Tbilisi. This is, hands down, one of the most interesting cities in the world. It's also one of the most complicated historically. So if you want to learn more about it, come join me over on my travel channel. I hope you enjoyed learning all about Uruguay. If you did, be sure to check out this video all about Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana. Thanks for watching. See you next time.